welcome this afternoon and into the early evening for our BD undergraduate alumni panel. We have 5 wonderful panelists with us this evening to talk to us about their experiences going through their job search process, including the successes and challenges they faced while they were preparing for employment. Our panelists are going to introduce themselves. We are going to do a round robin of questions and answers that we have shared with the panelists ahead of time, so they've had a chance to prepare some of their responses. And then we are going to open the floor to any questions from the audience. So please, as we are going through the panel and while I'm moderating and facilitating the questions for the panelists, please feel free to jot your own questions down. And when we are in the process of going through the audience sharing questions, definitely please feel free to share your questions in the chat box. You can either send them directly to me, Rebecca, or you can send them directly to everyone. And then I will share those questions with the panelists and they will be able to respond. Just note that you are welcome to address a question to a single panelist or to all, and then they will jump in, whoever feels ready and able to answer your question. Before we begin, I would like to give a land acknowledgement. So today I am connecting with you as an uninvited settler on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people, which lies within the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I thank everyone for being here and that all of us are healthy and safe during this time, as we are still in a virtual and remote space and will in the near future likely be returning to a more physical environment where we can actually be with each other once again in a physical space. So I'm going to ask now each of the panelists to introduce themselves. And of course, we have some images here of our panelists that we took from their LinkedIn. And they all come from very, very different backgrounds, but they're all SFU BD alumni. So I think it's really, really cool that we have a really diverse and interesting group of panelists here today. We try to do that for the sake of just bringing in interesting voices. We also do that because we have such a diverse group of students at SFU BD and students who are choosing different types of concentration and concentration combinations. And so it's really nice to have a group of panelists who have chosen different areas of study within BD while they were at SFU, and then have gone into very interesting career paths beyond SFU. So the panelists will introduce themselves, and I am going to hand the floor over to Nick. You are first, so feel free to introduce yourself, Nick.
Okay, I was on mute, sorry guys. Okay, hi everyone. And before I begin, I just wanted to say thank you to Rebecca for inviting me here. It's a real honor since I was actually a career launch student last semester myself. So I just started my job about 3 months ago. And yeah, so I graduated from Simon Fraser University in 2019 with concentration in marketing and finance. After that, I worked for about a year and a half for a small accounting software company. And this was a company that paid for my education. So I had a contract with them. So after that, I started searching for a new job. And I spent about four months doing that before I came across the career launch course. And I would say that career launch is about 50% responsible for me landing this new job. So it's been a great experience. And yeah, I look forward to sharing my insights.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. And just for those of you who are here, not from Career Launch, my apologies for not stating before, Career Launch is an 8-week intensive senior level student program. It's a voluntary program that you can join if you're interested in working on your job search skill set before you graduate from BD. Although actually Nick was an alumnus, so we do take in recent alumni as well into Career Launch if they're interested. And you focus on your personal branding, your networking, your information interviewing, and your interviewing / negotiating salary skill set. And so we actually have Miggy and Nick are both from the pilot program of Career Launch, and they were exceptional in the program, and they both were able to secure employment. So Nick, it just warms my heart to hear that you found Career Launch to be so helpful in your job search process, and we loved having you as part of that program.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Negin, you're next.
Hey everyone, it's great to see you all. My name is Negin. I work as a marketing coordinator at Dapper Labs. So I focus on a lot of their marketing projects, communications projects, event projects. I graduated from BD back in spring of 2019. But yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Was never a part of the Career Launch program, but it seems like a great program. And I was in the CMC office a lot, getting a lot of advice from them. So I'm super excited to be here. To help you all through this journey as well.
Wonderful, Negin, thank you. And awesome to hear that you got support and help from us at the CMC. That's what we're here for. So really great to hear that when you were still a student. Yeah, Career Launch only started this past spring term of 2021. So fortunately wasn't available when you were at SFU, but you had the awesome help of other colleagues at SFU while you were there. That's great. Michelle, feel free to go next.
Hey everyone, so great to be here this evening, and also really great to meet all of you virtually. So my name is Michelle, and back in undergrad, I did a dual concentration in MIS and operations management. And I was also, I guess, pretty exploratory throughout my undergrad, so got the chance to take a couple computer science and design courses on the side. And I would say that one of the main, I guess, involvement opportunities that really defined my undergrad career was getting involved in case competitions. So for a bit of background, throughout my 4 to 5-ish years of undergrad, definitely had the chance to compete in quite a few case competitions and got to travel to places like the States as well as New Zealand. But on top of that, something that I have super fond memories of in my undergrad was the opportunity to chair CASEIT, the international MIS competition back in 2019. And I guess translating that now into my current role as an associate product manager at Electronic Arts, currently working in gaming and specifically in the marketing technology function at EA. So really grateful to be here today and more than happy to answer any questions that folks may have on the call.
Michelle, I'd love to hear all of the work you did in extracurriculars. I'm sure that will come up as part of how you designed and planned your career path, and how you probably talked about those transferable skills and experiences in interviews. So excellent to hear about CASEIT. Also, on a personal note, my half-sister used to work for EA many, many years ago. She did event planning, and they had a really healthy budget a long time ago. I don't know if they still do. So she put on some pretty cool parties for employees, but that was many, many years ago.
I love the connection there.
Yeah. And Miggy, feel free to go next.
Hi everybody, my name's Miggy. I currently work as a settlement outreach worker at Langley Community Services. And part of what I do there revolves around connecting newcomer immigrants and refugees to various social and community-based services in Langley. So a lot of the things I also do revolve around just helping them get settled in. So whether that be through form assistance, referral to other services, or like information and orientation to Canadian culture. So right now it's a little bit slow because the borders are still closed, but they're kind of letting in some people here and there. But I'm actually still quite excited because we're doing a lot of prep work for when the borders open up again. But yes, I recently graduated from BD back in June 2021. So yeah, just a few days ago, and I'm super excited. I'm actually expecting my graduation box soon, and I'm super happy for that. And yeah, as Rebecca said, I was a part of the Career Launch first cohort. And yes, it's also been super helpful to help find a job. I actually just landed this settlement worker job back in May. So right after I graduated, I landed the job right away. And if it wasn't for Career Launch, I don't think I'd be here now. So yes, I'm happy to answer any kind of questions in relation to my job search strategies, as well as if you have any interests when it comes to nonprofit work.
Miggy, that's wonderful to hear about Career Launch, and thank you so much for giving Career Launch a shout out because it is a really young new program at SFU. I promise for everyone here, this is not an advertising campaign for Career Launch, but it just so happened that we really wanted to bring back two of our participants from that program who successfully found employment. And what I really love about Miggy's perspective today is because he's in the nonprofit sector with a business degree, I think that'll be a very interesting perspective for him to share on moving into that side or industry. So for any of those folks who are here in the audience today that might want to move into nonprofit, great opportunity to ask Miggy your questions and listen carefully to what he has to say. And last but certainly not least, and especially because I support CPA Recruit at SFU for our accounting students, I'm very happy to have Kyle Jacob. So Kyle, please say a few words about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me here, everyone. Pleasure to be here. So it looks like I'm the only panelist who's not graduated yet. So a few of you guys might see me on campus while I finish up the last few of my accounting courses. Thankfully back up at Berry Mountain this semester, so that's exciting. I'm currently working at EY right now. I'm an intern in the assurance practice, although more recently I've been working in the advisory group. So I'm happy to field some questions if anyone's interested in what advisory looks like at EY as well. So yeah, as Rebecca said, I've been through CPA Recruit twice now. So I did it when I was in my second year in person and then more recently virtually last summer. So some tips and tricks that go along with both of those different kind of approaches. So happy to answer some questions about those too, or just about how the process might work or what it looks like for people who are graduating soon and looking to get their CPA. Yeah, on campus, I was pretty involved in extracurriculars as well. So things like case competitions, GDC West and Isaac. So if anyone has any interest in those, I know that's not the primary focus today, but happy to answer some questions there and how it helped, build my resume and contributed to my career search as well.
Thanks so much, Kyle. And of course, having someone here who has gone through a recruit season, a recruit process and been successful with that, I think it's fantastic to have that experience brought to the table as well. So if anyone else has gone through that type of experience, feel free to speak to that as well. And everything is relevant. So don't worry, Kyle, you're welcome to talk about any of the background because anything will be helpful to our guest today. So thanks everyone for introducing yourselves. I'm just going to quickly share a couple of housekeeping items and then we will jump into our round robin of panelist questions. So of course, the event will consist of a panel discussion followed by Q&A. Please, if you can keep your microphones on mute unless you are prompted to speak during the Q&A, and I'll let you know that. You're also, of course, welcome to ask a question in the chat box or raising your hand. And if you can please specify which panelist your question is directed to, or if it's for all panelists, just so that I know to be able to direct it to someone specifically if that's the case. So I'm going to stop sharing, my apologies. And I am going to, I think I lost the question that Ahmed just sent to me. Give me one quick sec because I closed. Oh no, I got it here. I am just going to ask my first question. So Nick, you are our first one to begin. So Nick, you are presently a digital product information associate at Masco Canada. Prior to this, you were an online marketing manager for a small accounting software development company. As someone who has been successful exploring another career pathway, can you provide 3 tips to our students when it comes to being open to different pathways and opening different doors for themselves in the labor market?
Okay, thank you for the question, Rebecca. Yes, definitely. You're right. I just actually realized that I forgot to say where I work when I introduced myself. Yes, Masco Canada, Digital Product Information Associate. Yeah, so when it comes to changing industries, what I found useful for myself is basically spend a good amount of time on preparation, right? I had several Excel documents with 20 to 30 companies from the industries that I'm interested in. And basically those were the companies that I chose for me that they would be the best fit for me, right? And so basically every week I just monitored all of these companies. After starting with the career launch, I actually started networking a lot more, and I started networking with the people from there. And the trick here is that when you switch the industry, the interviewing process and what you put in put in your resume and requirements for that might be a bit different, right? And those differences are like very small. Like suppose some companies might want to have one-page resumes, and another company might want to have two-page resumes, like, right? So it's not something that it's not about your personality, your character. It's just about knowing how to brand yourself for this specific company and this specific industry, right? So after I made that list of the companies, I just started reaching out to people on LinkedIn, right? And I basically tried to get people from either people from the management or people from human resource, right? And if I get to somebody from the management, I always ask them to connect me to somebody from HR, right? Because HR is somebody who just works at the company might not have all that information, all those insights, but HR is actually the ones who their job is to find talent, right? And if somebody from the company tells them, okay, speak to this guy, right? They're going to be more than willing to speak with you and share details like about how to style your resume. They could even take a look at your resume. Like for me, like right before I found the job with Masco Canada, I actually had one of these networking calls with HR from P&G, right? Procter and Gamble. So basically we just had about 40-minute session. We sat down, she took a look at my resume, at my cover letter, told me, okay, change this, this, and this, and send your application. So, and this way you 100% sure that you're not going to be rejected for some formatting reason, right? Yeah, so that would be like a big one here. And another hint that when you're applying to a lot of different companies, a lot of different industries, you can lose track of what you're doing and what's going on, right? So it's important to keep entries of all the resumes that you send, to which companies that you're sending them, right? So in my example, I had an Excel document that was split into several categories by industry, by field of work, by how big the company was, and so on, right? And if you do it long enough, and suppose you apply to 70 jobs within a month, right? Just suppose you do that. By the end of the month, you're gonna have pretty good stats, right? And suppose you can look at it. Okay, so I sent 5% of my resumes were sent to marketing positions, but I only got 1% of their interviews. Of all the interviews, only 1% were for marketing jobs. So, and this way you can see if there is something that you're doing, you can see what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and you can correct your actions while job searching. Yeah, so those would be the biggest ones.
Nick, I really, really appreciate your tips. And that last one, actually, that was an aha moment for me. So I think that is something I'm actually going to now continue to bring into my teaching, so thank you for sharing that. I always do believe in a structured, organized, or organized-ish strategy when you're job searching, because like you said, you might be applying to many, many jobs in a short amount of time. And I always say things like save the job posting on your desktop or your hard drive, have a spreadsheet or a table of some kind, who you talk to, when, the application deadline was. It's kind of like applying to grad schools or applying to undergrad programs. You want to keep everything organized, right? But your takeaway around assessing the data, which makes so much sense considering that's one of your skill sets as well, right? Is assessing the data to understand what is working for you, right? Where are your resumes being acknowledged? Where are they not? Where are you getting interviews? Where are you not? And I think, like, if you were to create almost like someone who likes to do pie charts, if you were to be able to create a pie chart that to indicate, well, actually, 50% of my engagement has really been with industry X, I'm really not getting a piece of the pie of industry Y. Now, that might mean certain things. You might have to further educate, you might have to network more. It might mean it's just not the right fit for you as a professional. And so fantastic tip. I love that. So I will be using that. Thank you. Excellent. So Negin, you are going to be next. So your question, first question from me is, drawing from your passion for and background in marketing, can you speak to the importance of developing a personal brand to market oneself to a preferred industry, and offer a few tips on how to get started in creating one?
Yeah, for sure. So I find that the most transferable part between marketing and your job search is you have to think of the employer as if they're your audience. So when you're marketing something, you figure out what the audience is looking for, how that best matches your product, and then you make the connection there. So when you are trying to create your personal brand for who your employer is, you have to do the same thing. So what I would typically do is look at the job description, figure out which one of those skill sets I have, and really focus on emphasizing those. Because you might have a lot of different skills, but if they're not the ones that they're looking for specifically, then you're not utilizing your resume or your interview the best way if you're focusing on the wrong skills. So yeah, that's definitely how I would go about it. Specifically for a preferred industry, I would try to do research on that industry, try to figure out what the top skills are in that industry, either by looking at different LinkedIn posts for similar jobs or doing things like that, where you can just get kind of a benchmark of what is typically needed in that type of role or industry. That's what I would typically do when I'm applying for something that's in a more niche industry.
Excellent, and I love that you shared that that piece around LinkedIn. I mean, we talk about LinkedIn so much as a fabulous tool for being able to meet people in industries, but also, like you said, to do your research, right? LinkedIn doesn't necessarily only have to be a tool or used first and foremost for connecting. If someone is new to the idea of creating a brand for themselves and they just want to sort of get a sense of the lay of the land, they can do that through LinkedIn because people in real time are sharing their ideas, they're sharing job postings, they're updating their LinkedIn profiles because they might be looking for another job in their industry. So it's just a great place to kind of look around and see what people are saying about themselves and saying about their industry. So really, really appreciate that. Excellent. I was muted. My apologies. I was unmuted and muted myself before asking the question. Michelle, you're up next. So as an associate product manager, you work at the intersections of business, consumers, and products. What skills have you brought into your role at EA from your undergraduate degree, and how did you build these into your personal brand to be attractive to this sector?
Right. Thanks for that question, Rebecca. So I would say first, diving into some of the top 3 skills that I really acquired leading up to my role at EA, it would come down to a couple things. First one being problem solving. And especially as a student coming from a business background and having the opportunity to be immersed in case competitions or just student involvement across different clubs, I think that really enabled me to develop the perspective of taking on large and somewhat ambiguous but complex problems and breaking them down into understandable components or concepts, as well as the underlying root causes themselves. So I would say that's the first skill I acquired. Second one would definitely be strategic thinking. And within business school, oftentimes you're taught to think big picture, to think about the large overarching opportunities as well as challenges that a company is facing. And through these academics as well as extracurricular involvements, that really enabled me to hone my creativity as well as business acumen. And the last, as well as probably one of the most important things, would definitely be communication skills. So as part of being a product manager and as part of being someone working in an international type of company as well as setting, communicating with a wide variety of stakeholders that come from different backgrounds, expertise, as well as areas of knowledge is definitely really crucial. And something that I've learned along the way is that the way that you communicate to someone from an engineering background would be inherently different from, let's say, someone who comes from a marketing background. And the type of information that you give to senior executives would also be pretty different to someone, let's say, who's just starting out in their job. And so because of that, what I've come to learn is the importance of being versatile and flexible with your communication style. And when it comes to different people, really learning what type of communication approach, what type of message really gets across to them and their own goals. And that would be probably some of the most important skills. To answer the second part of your question, which would be related to building my personal brand, I would also summarize it into 3 easy steps. So the first one was firstly understanding what are my values and what do I really care for as both a professional as well as on an individual level. So some of the questions that I asked in kind of identifying what a personal brand will look like for me that I would then use throughout my recruitment and interview processes would be asking questions like, what motivates and energizes me during the day? And what kind of activities or involvements would I typically invest my free time into? And upon understanding and answering those questions, identifying my personal values, um, the second step would be identifying what kind of personal strengths I have. So understanding the relationship between like your values as well as your strengths can really help you identify, okay, if you wanted to convert your strengths into a potential career path, um, what kind of parallels can you draw between the things that you excel at versus the things that you value, as well as the things that you're interested in learning? And when you're able to kind of find that sweet spot between like all 3 of these things, it can really help you invest your effort into things that truly energize you. And just as a small example, something that I found through this exercise was learning how to collaborate with different people in challenging environments while solving very complex problems. And I was able to identify this through competing in quite a few different case competitions throughout my undergrad. And after kind of understanding, what are the different passions and interests that you have, being able to convert those into a clear narrative that you can then start sharing with those around you, whether they're your friends, your family, or your potential employers, can really help you start crafting that fine-tuned message of what your personal brand looks like. So just to quickly recap, the 3 steps for building my personal brand would stem from 1, understanding your values, 2, identifying your main strengths, and lastly, communicating your strengths to those around you.
Michelle, I just have to say you're an amazing communicator. So you got it down. You did a great job answering that question. I love how you summarized the end. That was fantastic. Also, it's like you were speaking my heart. You were speaking my truth. And I love that because I absolutely agree that when you're intrinsically motivated to do the work that you do and you're leading by strengths, by interests, by values, it makes your life so much easier when you're going to work every day. It makes you want to work. It makes you want to do the job that you're doing. And what I love that you also commented on is how experiential learning helped you figure that out as well, which was being involved in extracurricular activities. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in the workplace. It can be in volunteer opportunities, social experiences, extracurricular, et cetera, right? And then that can further come together in the workplace once you are working. So fantastic answer. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and we now have Kyle. Kyle, I'd like to jump over to you. So my first question for you, Kyle, is you were successful in converting your co-op role at EY into a full-time position, which is awesome. That is something I think every co-op student probably wants to do if they like where they're working during their co-op. So I hope you do like working at EY. While in your co-op role, what did you focus on to demonstrate your value to your team so that you could be considered for this full-time opportunity?
Yeah, sure. Well, first off, it's so true that, not everyone loves their co-op. So I'm lucky enough to have enjoyed mine. And if you are in the boat where you do like your co-op or your internship, whatever you're doing in the meantime, it's oftentimes, especially in accounting, and I imagine in other fields as well, that you might not have the full arsenal of technical skills yet. So if you're looking to, to impress your team, your manager, that might not be where you might excel. What we can always do is have a really hot, strong willingness to learn and ask a lot of questions. I know where I work, and I imagine most other places, questions from new hires are probably really welcomed. And it shows that you're trying your best to understand what role you play in the bigger picture and where you can contribute to your team. And I think as a new hire, that's where you can show that you're interested and that you're a valuable member of the team. Secondly, you're definitely going to make mistakes. So no matter what you do, just bring a good attitude, because everyone loves a team member that is upbeat and fun to be around. I'm sure anyone here can attest to that as well. So at the end of the day, those are 2 things that are 100% in your control, technical skills aside. So that's just being willing to learn and being a pleasure to be around. And with those two things, I think your team will find that you're irreplaceable, really.
Kyle, I love what you said about it's okay to make mistakes. And I just want to reiterate that because whether you're in a co-op or you've just started your first professional job in your early career, or you're transitioning into a new industry or a newer job, mistakes will happen. And I remember being so nervous all the time about making a mistake when I first entered into my industry and was working at a different university, to the point that I anxiously sweat all the time. And I know that's probably TMI, but I did. And I was so worried about making a mistake, but that's part of learning. That's part of growth. And just as you would professionally grow outside of the workplace in other parts of your life, you are too going to have to grow and learn in the work environment you're in, whether that's co-op or whether that's, you know, post-graduation work. And I think it's just great to, like you said, still keep a smile on your face, show that you're learning, show your level of self-awareness around that. And your employers will understand. And if they see that quality in you and those behaviors in you, they will see a lifelong learner who is interested in growing with them. I truly believe that. And that can lead to full-time opportunities. So great point, Kyle. Okay, Miggy, last but certainly not least in our first round robin fire shoot question period. So Miggy, in your role as a settlement outreach worker at Langley Community Services, you support community outreach and engagement. What networking strategies do you find yourself employing to create and maintain these connections for yourself and your organization?
Thank you for the question, Rebecca. And my main method for networking essentially revolves around informational interviewing. So with this method, it actually helps me learn more about the person I'm talking to, their role, as well as the company they're working for. So I actually have like a few strategies in relation to that. And the first one is do your research. So the way I approach this is like who's the person you want to talk to and where are you going to find these network leads? And my main sources is definitely LinkedIn, first off. You could also be reading news articles and just find a name that was mentioned in the article, and you could also contact them. When you're talking to colleagues, friends, maybe they know a person that would be interested to talk as well and share more of their knowledge. And then when you do find these people that you want to talk to, you could try to find articles or blogs that is related to the person. You could visit the company website for where they work at. And also, yes, like LinkedIn, their portfolio, just do your research for sure. And the reason I'm emphasizing this is when you do your research, you could create a set of questions or a set of discussion points where, where you could identify what you really want to ask or identify what you need elaboration on. And this is an observation I had with a lot of the informational interviews that I did. The more than likely professionals will actually mention a name or an organization when you're talking with them. And what I do is I write them down and eventually decide right after, the meeting or some other time to see if I'd like to follow that lead. And this is a good way to kind of like keep finding these new networks because, at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with just finding out more information about what your work, the work you're doing or like what your interests and passion is. And what a side note to that also is with these professionals who do drop names or organizations, you could also ask them if you could get an introduction. And I feel like they'll be more than happy to help you with that. And lastly, when it comes to like keeping yourself engaged with your networks that you found, I found it personally useful that if you show appreciation by thanking them for your time and also telling them what the information you got from these, informational interviews would be used for. So for instance, how does your connection to them help impact your life? Or you could also try to find opportunities to chat with them again. And also there's a lot of ways that you could do when it comes to like doing a follow-up with them. What I usually do is I notify them of any updates that have happened since the conversation that we've had, or also you could show them an article that could be of interest to them. And you could also just engage with them through LinkedIn using, or like through their LinkedIn posts. And I think that's essentially what would continue to engage yourself or how you would engage yourself with these networks that you made.
Miggy, I really loved what you said about doing your research, and I feel that that was a theme that was carried throughout your response, which I think is fantastic. I think doing your research before you run information interviews, while you're running those interviews by asking your questions based on curiosity and need, and then following up by doing your research by sharing further resources with those that you have networked with and run information interviews with, really shows your commitment to the cause. It also shows your intelligence, your initiative, and your desire to really learn from that person, as well as to take the lead to learn on your own. And I think that is such a nice way for network contacts to feel like they are being respected and they are learning from you, and also that they're actually giving back to you something that you need. And I think one of the greatest things around research is you're all being trained or have been trained and educated on how to do research as a university student. So if you think of the last 4 years, or if you're wherever you are in your degree, 4 to 5 to 6 years that you'll be at SFU, a big part of that is research focused work. And so that is a skill set you are honing and perfecting as you go through your undergrad. And so why not keep using it? You know, it's just such a valuable skill. So awesome. Thank you, Miggy. Okay, we're going to round 2 of panelist questions, and then we are going to open this up to our audience members. So like I said, to those of you that are listening in, please jot down your questions for yourself and get ready to share those in the chat box for our panelists, because we would love to hear from you. And before we do that, I'm just going to share a few more questions with our panelists to answer. So let's go back to Nick. So Nick, as you underwent a career change and landed a new job during the pandemic, what do you think were the most important steps you took to ensure your success?
You know, I don't want to say taking career launch program, but I kind of have to. I mean, just for simple reasons that I spent about 4 months, as I said, sending resumes to different companies, right? And I was maybe getting 2 or 3 interviews a month, you know, well, I was still getting some, but like definitely not enough in proportion to how many resumes I've sent. Yeah, and I wouldn't say that I specifically learned any new information from the course, but it gave me a habit of networking. It changed my perspective on what's effective, what's working, and what's not working, right? And basically, after 1 month into the career launch, if I spent about 90% of my time cold sending resumes before and about 10% of the time networking, I started spending 100% of time networking, like no cold sending of resumes, nothing like that. So yeah, I started talking to people, started to open myself to different industries, to different fields of work. I had my own set of fields that I want to work in, but for me, it was in the beginning, it's about quantity, in my opinion, because when you start networking, it's about finding enough networking contacts so that that network can become effective for you, right? And after that, it becomes it leans towards quality, right? So when you get that network established, like like new contacts that you find, you wanna find the ones that are the most relevant to you, right? And you wanna prioritize the contacts that you already have connection with, right? That are working in the top companies that you wanna work for, right? Stuff like that. And what was actually very useful to me was in sense of networking is I was able to get feedback from after my interviews, right? So if I had a contact in that company and they were maybe upper management or somebody in HR, right, I could reach out to them and just ask them if they got any insight of what can I do better next time, right? What did I do wrong? So why did the interviewer not like me? You can say so. And the companies, in general, companies don't have any incentive to share it with people they don't hire, because yeah, there might be litigation after that. They don't know what can happen, right? So if you have that in with the company, yeah, it's very easy to see what you've done wrong, and next time that you apply to that company, you know what to correct, right? So and another useful tip I would say that after networking with people, make sure that you remind of yourself, right? Don't just expect that if somebody comes, if a job comes towards somebody, right, that they're just gonna think of you right away. I mean, you don't owe anything to them, they don't owe anything to you, right? So it's about relationship, and just reach out back to them, say, remind of yourself, and do it regularly, you know, and prioritize the contacts that you see most important for you at the moment. But yeah, my insight here is that don't cold send your resumes, and network a lot.
Nick, I love what you shared about networking, because you kind of took it to the next level here, which is that networking is about building relationships. And Miggy talked a lot about the tips that you can, or gave us tips around how do you even start to build those relationships, you know, by doing your research, by running information interviews, getting additional names, you know, continuing to build that web of contacts for yourself. And Nick, from what I'm hearing from you, you're also saying it's about mentorship, where when you build relationships and good relationships with people in companies, you maintain those relationships where there's a give and take. There's no expectation that your contact will secure anything for you. That is, you know, not necessarily even up to them at the end of the day. But what you can do is gain really insightful knowledge and information around things like if you interviewed and didn't get the job, right? Or if a job is coming down the pipeline, what you should do to enhance your resume further. Not as if you don't even have to send a resume anymore. It's not like that. You might still have to send in that document, but now it's going to look exactly like what they're looking for. So I really think that piece around building a mentoring relationship with network contacts, maybe not every contact in your network, but certain contacts can really help to solidify that successful job search, which is, from what you're saying, through Career Launch. And thank you again for the shout out for Career Launch. And for those of you who aren't in it, we can help you with all those things at the Career Management Center as well, and one-to-one advising. Just going to plug that right now. But what you were saying is that you really transitioned to really focusing on networking and really treating it as a serious experience where you really built a mentorship relationship from what I'm hearing. And that's fantastic. Excellent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thanks, Nick. Excellent. Okay, and Negin, you're up next. So can you tell us about how you effectively prepared for your interview when interviewing with Dapper Labs? What past experiences did you bring into the interview to relate to this niche industry?
Yeah, for sure. So I did quite a few things to prepare for the interview. I would say there isn't one thing that you should be doing. There's multiple. So what I did to start off with was go on their YouTube page, because it was such a niche industry, especially 2 years ago. Like, nobody really knew that much about blockchain. Nobody really knew what an NFT was. I definitely had to go on their YouTube page, like just watch everything that they had to get more information on that. Also, because I was looking for like a marketing and tech job, doing just looking up just general questions that they typically ask in marketing and tech interviews, and just preparing my answers for that, being ready for anything that they might ask me by just looking up questions on Google that are like typically asked. Additionally, I know I mentioned this at the beginning, but I went into CMC like a lot of times to ask a lot of questions, do practice, pull together any bits of information they had. So yeah, that's always my biggest tip. Go into CMC. You can also go in after you've graduated, and they have lots of great tips for that as well. So always go into CMC. What else did I do? Another great tip is, if you do know someone who works at the company, connecting with them, even if they aren't there to necessarily help you get the job, it helps ease your nerves just talking to someone like the day before you actually do your interview. Sometimes they have information that could be helpful to you. So definitely, if you do know someone, reach out to them, try to kind of get some information on the company if you can. Specifically for this niche, I got lucky 2 years ago. They weren't specifically looking for people who were blockchain experts, but definitely being able to bring forward whatever research I was able to find online was super helpful. But because it was straight out of university, I drew on a lot of my university experiences. So I think one of the big things was the girl who was interviewing me was the president of her marketing association. So saying that I was a president of my marketing association was definitely a tick for her. And I think that kind of helped push my application just like over the edge a little bit to help me secure that position.
I love that, Negin, that human to human connection, right? Shared lived experiences. I've connected with people in interviews because we both have dogs, or it might be because, we have had a similar work experience, like you've mentioned. It could be really anything. You might know someone, through your network. It really goes a long way to develop the human connection. And I also just want to say briefly, I love that you brought in the YouTube sort of research. I don't know even what to call it, the research-based approach by going online. I've definitely gone through many Google rabbit holes, or down those, so to speak, when I'm doing my online research around companies. You can find such interesting videos and insights from former professionals who have worked for those industries, also different types of learning tools that those industries are using. You can self-educate, you can learn about what's happening relative to the news and the media for certain industries. So if you are someone like Negin, who is interested in applying to something that's more niche or specialized, or maybe it won't be in a couple of years, but it is right now, it's really valuable to find out what's happening in real time, because often those industries are expanding very quickly. If they're doing well, they're growing. And that might have been an experience you had for you, Negin. So you want to be on top of the trends and the growth and what's happening in that type of industry, which is awesome. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, I am going to move over to Michelle. So Michelle, for students who wish to pursue a career in product management, what kinds of experiences should they participate in leading to their graduation to be competitive in this part of the labor market when applying for jobs?
For sure. So I think to start off this question, what I'll say is that when it comes to product management, as well as I imagine many other career paths that you as a student can take, there's a large emphasis around having the ability to clearly identify what is the actual pain points that a user is facing within the problem space, and being able to translate those pain points into actual opportunities or features that address those bespoke pain points in a solution space. So because of this, I would say, general concept, it's really important for someone who wants to break into product to not only be a self-starter, as well as having the required problem-solving capabilities, but it's also really important that you've showcased those experiences in one format or another. And oftentimes, one of the best ways that you can really do this is, to Rebecca's earlier point, through experiential learning. And specifically within SFU, some of the really great things that I love about our university is that there are so many opportunities for you as a student to get involved, whether that's through existing programs that are offered by SFU, such as the Career Launch Program mentioned by Rebecca and a couple others earlier, but also things like the Management Consulting Career Preparation Program or the Marketing Accelerator Program, which are also really great for folks who want to go into consulting, want to go into product, and et cetera. And also external student events that would be things like case competitions, hackathons, prodathons, and a couple others. Essentially, these type of events could be platforms that could be used to showcase your problem thinking, your presentation, as well as your creative solutioning skills as well. And on the flip side, I would say a couple other things that can also be really helpful is if you look internally within the school. Some courses that also involve interaction with different companies in the business community could also be really beneficial. One of the favorite courses that I took in my undergrad was a course called Managing Emerging Opportunities, or Biz 450. And it's a course that currently sits under the entrepreneurship and innovation concentration, but it was just tremendously helpful, and it actually helped me kind of land my current role at EA, in the sense that the entire course is structured essentially to be like a semester of pro bono consulting for 3 different clients. And because you're literally working with 3 different clients across different industries in very unique problem spaces for the entire semester, it not only gives you that ability to apply your problem thinking in very unique industries, but also gives you that face-to-face interaction with your clients that you may not get otherwise. So highly recommend that course for students who have a couple semesters left and might be interested in getting some extra credits. And last but not least, just to summarize, a couple additional suggestions I would recommend for folks is student involvement is a really great way of demonstrating your project management and leadership skills. So a couple examples that I think could be really helpful for students who want to get a wide exposure to different problem spaces as well as different industries would be clubs like JDC West, Axis Consulting, and CASEIT could be really great as well. So those are just some high-level experiences that I would recommend on top of co-op and internships, which are definitely hugely, hugely valuable as well.
Michelle, I love that you gave a shout out to SFU. Awesome for SFU for creating a course like that. It sounds fantastic. I myself did not go to SFU and take that course, but just what a great opportunity to get credit for learning how to problem solve and consult with industries and do, almost like you said, pro bono work and gain that experience. You can throw that into your resume, which is awesome. Also, you gave a shout out to our career prep program. So Career Launch is one of them, but we also have our Marketing Accelerator program, like you mentioned. MCCP, we have Beam. These are excellent opportunities that we help to support, although they're student-led, which is fantastic. So you can either be a member as a student or you can lead it as part of the executive of that organization, I guess internal organization at SFU, to gain experience. You just shared so many amazing ways that you can gain experience while you're a student. And everyone's journey will be different. Everyone has certain priorities, certain needs, certain things they have to do on a day-to-day basis. So people can only do so much, right? And you don't have to cover everything, but getting involved in what you're interested in and being able to activate your skills in that environment is just an excellent way to gain experience, to meet great contacts, to prove your value and your worth, and then to throw that all very nicely into a resume cover letter and in your interviewing opportunities. So thank you for sharing all those examples, Michelle. That was awesome. Okay. We are going to turn over to Miggy, and then Kyle, you will finish us off for the panelist questions. So Miggy, you are next. How did you bring your personal brand into your networking and interview opportunities to showcase your relevance to this nonprofit sector that you're in?
Right. So my best advice that I could give here is differentiate yourself from competition or others. And the main point here is, or ask yourself, what makes me unique? So when I was doing research in the nonprofit industry, I actually noticed that there's a need, or like a big need, for creativity and innovation. And in this case, that was actually my background in marketing and communications that I used as my main selling point. So I highlighted the fact that I know how to find clients and how to keep them engaged. I'm very well versed when it comes to storytelling because I like listening to other people's experiences and conveying, their stories. And I also have experience when it comes to incorporating creative media in marketing campaigns. So whether that be graphic design, social media posts, or even videography. And another good point I have here is that when you're networking or being in interviews, you have to make yourself memorable. Now, there's so many ways you could do that. And for me personally, what I do like doing is I like using anecdotes or personal stories, because if you happen to know me, I'm actually very much an open book, and I just like talking about anything and everything. And as an example, when talking about skills or personality traits, I call myself very curiosity driven. And that's why when I come across a new topic or a concept, I read up, I do some research, or I watch a video on it. And I kind of like turn that around by saying, this allows me to be well spoken in a variety of topics. And I would tell the person I'm talking to about how, like, you could probably talk to me about anything and I probably have something to say about it. So in a way, it's like, right now I branded myself as somebody you could talk to about anything. And, maybe this may be memorable to you, maybe it won't be, because as I said, everybody has their different ways of making themselves memorable. And I think ultimately, you gotta figure that out in terms of like creativity too, because not everything fits for everyone.
Miggy, I love that you shared that about yourself. I think it's so good to be honest about who you are, right? And if you are the kind of person that loves to share, loves to be an open book, loves to discuss many different topics, and that is in how you intrinsically even motivate yourself to have conversations with each other or with other people, then I think that it's really important to be aware. That level of self-awareness is so valuable because it truly shows a genuine sense of brand when it comes to you. And that is what differentiates you, right? And that doesn't mean everyone will take to it, right? You have to have, sometimes in job search, you have to have a bit of a thick skin, right? Where you don't know if some people are going to want you or like you or need you on their team, but others will just love you and think they can't work without you and you are going to move the company forward, or the role or position or opportunity is just, it was like it was made for you, and it fell into your lap. So these things happen in the course of our careers. And I think it's very important for you to be your authentic self, right? And we hear that nowadays when people say, bring your whole self to work. Now, of course, that comes with a little bit of parameters, right? You've got to be mindful. You can't bring everything about your life to work. But I think there's definitely truth in being who you are in the workplace. And then you feel comfortable wherever you are and accepted. So that's fantastic. Thank you. And Kyle, last but not least, for students who are going through CP Recruit or any other recruitment process, can you speak to or provide any advice regarding the importance of networking and attending industry events?
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think I can stress enough how important going to these events is and just getting to know people. So from both perspectives, from both you, the future employee, and from the employer's point of view. So I guess first I'll touch on from you, the employee. So obviously, a corporation is just a bunch of people. That's what a company is. But so those people are going to be who you're spending the most of your day with for the next however many years you're with that company. So obviously you'd want to get to know those people and know who your team is before you take the job, ideally, so that you know if you're a good fit there and if that's somewhere where you're going to enjoy being. Especially in accounting, you have some really long days in busy season. It could be 10, 11 hours, and you don't like the people you're with, it's going to be that much longer of a day. Or vice versa, if you're having a good time, it can go by so much faster and it might not even feel like you're at work. So yeah, for me, as for you guys, I'm sure we've heard in this economy, the employee has a leverage again. Everyone's suddenly looking for people to hire. So I think this is a great time to leverage this. And you can see which company gives you the best vibe and the best culture. I'm sure you can ask about that, but there's no better way to get it than to experience it firsthand for yourself and decide for you who you think you are the best fit with. But then it goes both ways with the employer. So obviously, knowing that in a service economy, if you're working in a professional service firm or really anyone that's client facing, the people ever drive the company's success. So obviously the employer wants to get to know you the best they can too. And there's only so much they can get out of you in a 1-hour interview. So the more of these events you go to, the more that they get to have a genuine connection with you and get to know each other a little bit more, the more confident they can be when they're finally offering you a job offer. And that also helps to give you a little more wiggle room. Maybe you are really nervous about the interview and maybe it doesn't go exactly as you had hoped. But since you have a genuine, strong foundation with them already, because you've probably met the same person who's interviewing you a number of times, if you're going to these events, you can kind of bomb the interview and they still even know exactly who you are and they'll just chalk it up to you being nervous and you might still be fine. So there's definitely a bunch of reasons from the employee and the employer to go to these events and to get to know you. So keep in mind that they want to know you just as much as you, the future employee, want to get to know them. And just speaking as a campus ambassador who's helped out with the campus recruiting team, when you get a pile of resumes, if you don't know any, can't put faces to the names on those resumes, it's not, it's pretty easy to kind of glance over it. But if it's someone that and you can kind of root for, then it's so much easier to pass that on and move up the ladder that way. And if you don't go to these events, there's simply no way that you're going to put your name out there, and it's really easy to get lost in the shuffle, even if you do have an amazing resume. So I really can't emphasize enough that at least in the accounting industry, or I'm sure it's similar in other concentrations as well, you want to go to these events and get your name out there and start building those relationships as soon as you can.
Kyle, I love what you said about going to these set events where they're structured around networking specifically, or they're information sessions where professionals are there to share what they do or talk about their companies. It really is a win-win because they are there for that reason. They're getting paid by their employer to go to those events. Or if they're not and they're going to a networking event and you happen to virtually or in person run into them, they're going there because they're intrinsically motivated for some reason to go. And so meeting people in those environments is so valuable because they're already in the headspace to connect, right? They're already in the headspace to look for talent. they're already in the headspace to potentially share information they bring back to their employer because they've been tasked with going to these events or running these events. So you benefit them just as much as they benefit you, right? By going and networking. So I love and very much encourage structured networking events that are meant for that purpose specifically. It doesn't mean you can't network elsewhere, but it's a nice way to add, sort of an ongoing networking experience into your portfolio or even if you're starting out and you're scared or not sure about networking one-on-one by finding people on your own, it's a great place to start as well. Awesome. Okay, panelists, you did an amazing job. So impressed with your answers. Really loved hearing from you. And I am going to turn it over to our participants to share your messages. A few are coming in already. Ahmed has also written a note in the Q&A box to either send a message to myself or you can send it to everyone in the chat box and I will read the questions out. I already had a couple of questions come in just before we finished. So the first question from our audience is for Nick. So Nick, the participant said, I may have misheard, but did you request a recruiter from P&G to review your resume? Assuming you actually are going to apply there, won't that be considered bias? Oh, Nick, you're muted, just so you know. Yes, thank you. Interesting question.
Yeah, I keep on forgetting about that. Well, I mean, it would only constitute bias here if they're the same people who would interview you and who would be making this. If they would be in any way involved in the decisions, and yes, of course, there would be bias. But P&G is a really big company, and if you network with HR from P&G, they will make sure that they are not the ones who are going to interview you, right? So in that sense, I don't see a problem there. Yeah, well, just a bit more background on that story, right? So I basically, after networking with, so one person connected me to another person connected me to a second person, to a third person before I got to a financial manager at P&G, right? So we had a discussion, we had a half-an-hour call with them, and at the end of the call, I asked them if they connect me to HR, right? Yeah, I was HR actually reached out to me on the HR representative reached out to me, so I wasn't actually the one to write HR. So yeah, my contact in the company reached out to HR, they reached out to me, and then we had that conversation, right? So it wasn't that I was demanding to speak to HR, nothing like that, right? But if it never hurts to ask, and if the company is willing to do that, then they're okay with that, and they don't see any bias there.
And Nick, I think one thing I'd like to add to your response, you folks are so stimulating. I just want to keep adding to all of your responses, but I know this is about you and not me. But I think one thing to think here is they can always say no, right? So a response can always be no. Again, you don't want to necessarily have to take offense to that if they don't want to or can't, or they can politely decline because it could be a conflict of interest, but never hurts to ask, right? And if you're doing it politely and you're being considerate, worst case scenario, they say no. Best case scenario, they say sure. And it's almost like you kill two birds with one stone. They give you some feedback and they're probably also assessing your resume at the same time and maybe thinking of you as a potential candidate. But that's sort of one of the mindsets I've had to develop for myself in my profession when I'm a job seeker, and also to share with others, is sometimes you have to kind of put your foot forward and really take that initiative. And then worst case scenario, it's like, sorry, no can do, and right? Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions coming in, so I'm really excited. So I have a question for Miggy. Your career path is not only interesting, but also inspiring. Oh, isn't that a lovely compliment? What led you to work for a nonprofit organization?
That's a good question, and thank you for that. Well, I guess I'll give you a little bit of background as to how I got into this industry, or at least the line of work that I'm doing. So or at least the biggest reason why I chose to work at the settlement as a settlement worker is because I'm also an immigrant. We moved here to Canada roughly 10, 11 years ago. And the settlement services are actually, the first services that we got here when we settled here into Canada. And I just thought of it as a way of me giving back. where, we got the available resources that we needed right away. We were referred to any kind of help that we needed. Maybe it could be like the food bank, or it could be the local churches that we would have to visit, or like where we could practice our religion. So yeah, with the settlement services, it's definitely, it's like a touch point for a lot of immigrants to feel connected to the community right away. And that's how me and my family felt when we first immigrated here. So as I said, yeah, this is just me kind of like giving back to the community. But also, I think for me, I just enjoy fulfilling work. But I don't mean it as like, any kind of other work is not fulfilling. I just mean as for me, I find it fulfilling because there's like another attachment to it, which is me, my way of giving back and how I was impacted back then, and how I want to do this too as my line of work.
Miggy, I feel it really connects with what your statement earlier, which is around that you love to share about yourself, you love to tell stories and connect with others. And I feel this type of industry that you're in would really offer you that, because when you're meeting with and engaging with other people coming into Canada and or hearing their stories, or integrating that into the work that you do, that would also be very fulfilling, I would think, for someone like yourself. And so it goes back to what Michelle actually said earlier, which is lead with your values, right? And lead with your strengths and your interests. So all this all coming together. So I love it. Great response. This is a question for anyone. So any of the panelists, welcome to step in and take a stab at it. Is it okay to attend networking events and industry panels even after you graduate? I know some students may not like to do that. That was the end. That was more of a statement at the end. But really the question here is it okay to attend networking events and industry panels even after you graduate? Any thoughts on that?
Can I jump in here?
Sure, Nick, go ahead.
I feel you not only can, but you should be doing that. Like even if you already got a job, like, I mean, it never hurts to see what's out there, right? It never hurts to get all those new contacts, I guess, so that you never know what's going to happen in half a year, in 1 year, right? So you might be on a job market again, or like you might have a friend who is looking for a job, and you might connect them to them, right? So I would definitely say you have to do that. So it's not only okay, it is to do that. Yeah.
Anyone else like to share or share an experience of attending a networking event? Absolutely agree with Nick, 100%. I think you should still keep attending. If you don't attend them as a student, it's fine. I say fine, I hesitate because I think you should attend them when you're a student, but if you don't and you want to wait till after graduation, definitely do so after graduation. Any other thoughts?
Yeah. I just want to add into that too. I think what Nick said is correct about, always wanting to explore your options. And personally, I feel like job exploration is something that we should always continue with us, even, no matter what stage you're in your career. Just looking at what other options you have out there, because I'm sure you'll be qualified and capable to do so many other things than what it is that you're doing right now. And, even if those jobs aren't something that you want to end up taking, just knowing what's out there to you can help you feel more at ease in where you are right now, and kind of reassuring yourself that you did make the best choice in your career path and that you're happy where you are. Like even myself, I had an interview for a different job just yesterday, and I probably wouldn't want it, but it's something that I'm always exploring to see what other options are out there for you. And you're not going to know what's out there until you go out and look yourself, right? So I think definitely you should always be looking to attend these events and look what other opportunities might come your way.
Yeah, it never hurts to keep your eyes and your ears open. And, research has shown that professionals that are, I guess our generation and even younger are having multiple career paths in a lifetime. So you might find that you start in one place and move in one direction, and then you sort of switch gears. And that might be through what you learn within your network. Absolutely, Kyle. So I definitely agree. You can continue to do this over the course of your career, not just to get your first job and then unless you stay with that company forever, but even then you can network internally. So networking is just overall, just do it as much as you want, as much as you can for the rest of your life. Elena, my apologies. Another participant had a question. I just mentioned her name. So this one's for Negin and Michelle. When did you start seriously applying for jobs? Was it 1 year before graduation, 1 semester before graduation? And a follow-up question is, do you have any advice on when to start applying or looking?
Yeah, so I think it's totally different depending on the industry that you're in. for me being like looking for marketing and tech jobs, it didn't make sense to start applying early because they want you to start within 2 weeks or a week of you getting the offer. So for me, it wasn't until I didn't start looking seriously until right after graduation, which I know isn't always the best advice, but it really depends on the industry that you're looking to go into. So for me, I didn't fully like spend all of my hours on it until closer to the end of when I was going to be finished school, because even if I would have received an offer, it would have been rescinded because I wouldn't have been able to start right away.
Yeah, I also agree with Negin in the sense that it is really dependent on the typical recruitment life cycle of your desired industry or desired role. Personally, I would say for, let's say, professional service industries or roles such as consulting and audit or tax, you'll most likely want to start a year in advance because that's typically when they'll start recruiting for their next batch of new grads. Personally, for me, when looking for my current role at EA, I would say I started seriously kind of having conversations with folks working at the company probably half a year before graduating. So it was essentially a transition period between where I was in my last 1 to 2 semesters of university and was looking for different type of opportunities after graduation. So I think the biggest suggestion I would have for students interested in this is understanding what kind of industry and what kind of role you're interested in, and taking a really careful look at what are the typical recruitment timelines and requirements for that company, because you won't be able to come up with a effective strategy until you do your research in advance.
Yeah. And I will say, although I didn't start applying to jobs until after graduation, I was networking and doing coffee chats at least 2 years before just to get those connections in. So when I did want to apply, I already had people at the companies I wanted to work with that I could reach out to.
That's actually a great way to end off that type of response from both you, Michelle and Negin, which I think is both great tips. It really is, you know, you may not be yet applying, but it's never too late to start doing your research, to look at the job postings you're interested in. We have students who bring job postings to us. They're not going to apply to them. They just want to know when they are going to apply, how best to frame a resume cover letter. So you can think of it as a case study that you can use, or also build your networking community up before you get to the point where you want to ask those professionals for some help in reviewing resume or being a reference for you. So really great points. Oh, and this is a question for everyone as well. So for those who have graduated already, Kyle, you are welcome to answer this question. You have officially graduated. What would be the first thing you would do to start off your job search on a strong note? Actually, it'd be nice to hear from each of the panelists on this if possible. What is the first thing you recommend doing to get that ball rolling and starting off your job search on a strong note?
I could start off with this if you don't mind. So my best advice for this is to utilize your available resources. And by that, I mean there's CMC, where the career coaches are always there to help you when it comes to, you know, getting that resume enhanced. Maybe you need help when it comes to writing that cover letter, or you just need to practice answering interview questions. Another good resource is LinkedIn. You could definitely tell them, or you could make a public post about how you're looking for a job. And more than likely, there's going to be a lot of people helping you out with that as well. And then also, you could also even tell your friends and family that you're looking for a job, because I think that's like the best, at least that's how I utilize, or that's how that's what I did when I was looking for a job. I was just telling people that, you know, hey, if you don't mind, I'm looking for like marketing, so marketing work in the nonprofit industry. And then more than likely, there will be definitely helping you out when it comes to finding that job. So that'd be my advice for that.
I can jump in next. So yeah, totally agree with what Miggy said about telling people that you're looking for a job. A lot of the times people will tell me they're looking for a job, and because I'm on LinkedIn so much, I will send people jobs constantly that I think might work for them. So if you're ever looking for anything, let me know. And I'm on LinkedIn all the time. I'll send you jobs. But what I did to start off with was I had a spreadsheet. So this is the job I'm applying for. This is the type of resume I'm going to submit. This is the day I submitted it. If I know someone who works there, can I contact them? Who do I know who works there? So I'm not reaching out to them a million times. So yeah, having like a spreadsheet of what you're looking for, but yeah, definitely reaching out to people that you know who work there. Also through LinkedIn, if you see someone who works there and you have a mutual connection and you know the mutual connection well enough, they might be able to put you in contact with them, which I did a lot as well.
Yeah, and I can really second what Negin just said. I mean, it's important to have that list, right? To keep track of what you're doing, just to track your progress. But my advice would be very similar, I guess. Prepare and research, right? Know, like before you even start a job search, have like simple idea of what you want to be doing, right? Then figure out a list of top companies that you want to go into, that you want to work for, and go from there. Research all those companies, and you don't have to do it like in a single day, right? It has to be a process, and updates at least as you go on with your job search. Look for people on LinkedIn from those companies, right? And most importantly, I guess, create a specific action plan for yourself. Suppose this week I'm gonna reach this milestone. Next week I'm gonna reach this milestone, and it doesn't have to be like to find a job, something like that. But suppose by next week I'm gonna have this many contacts in this industry, or by next week I'm gonna send this many resumes over there, or by next week I'm gonna take career launch course, like stuff like that. So be very specific about what you're doing, prepare in advance, do your research, and yeah, and you'll be successful.
Love that advice from Nikita, and happy to jump in here as well. My recommendation for folks would be definitely to start looking into and investigating, as well as practicing, the type of potential interview questions you get in the industries that you're interested in, because the type of the type of interview format you go through for a job in tech might be really different from, let's say, an interview in consulting, as well as an interview in product. And so familiarizing yourself with the type of structure and the type of questions that will be asked of you in these interview settings can definitely give you a really clear edge when you are going through the interview processes themselves. Something that I would say is universal across whichever industry or whichever job you're interested in is definitely practicing and polishing up your behaviorals. So the recommendation I would give here is for students who may not have heard of the STAR or CAR method. These are all really, really helpful ways of learning to craft your story and approach your behavioral and situational questions when you go into interviews. So would highly recommend folks to kind of look that up on Google, as well as just look for free resources that provide a ton of different behavioral and situational questions that span from, tell me about a time when you've worked with a difficult teammate. Tell me about a time when a stakeholder has pushed back on what you're saying and what was your response to it. And a lot of these questions are oftentimes really applicable across whichever job you're looking for. So whenever you can touch up on your stories, apply the frameworks, and then just practice it in front of the mirror or in front of your friends and peers, that can also really help you when you are in the real deal.
To finish up, I definitely agree that with Michelle that interview prep goes a long way. And there's actually a service on BD Community. I think it's called Interview Stream, or I forget the name of it. Yeah, she's nodding. So yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, that was really helpful for me. And you can see yourself play back in video, which was, you can kind of laugh a bit at yourself, but it goes a long way too. But for me, I'd say just keep an eye out on any events coming up. It's kind of going back to like networking. Just if you're in CPA, I know there's a CPA Recruit newsletter. I'm sure there's other similar things for other concentrations as well. But just keep an eye out for any events going on and take chances you can to meet people. If you're early in job search, that's definitely where I would start and getting yourself out there a little bit more.
I honestly think this is a really great place to we're not gonna do like a total shutdown at this moment, like everyone log out, but a really great place to sort of wind up, because that was such a great question to have been asked from one of our attendees, and for each of you to have a chance almost to share your piece of advice, right? Like, how do we get started in this way? And you all shared such excellent ways of getting started. And there's no one way, there's no perfect formula. Trust me, if career advisors had it, we would share it. Potentially not, because we want to have jobs, because that's what we're here for, to help navigate this crazy world that we're in when it comes to the labor market and the uncertainty of life and work. But that doesn't mean there isn't strategy, there isn't an intelligent approach, there isn't, being motivated by your intrinsic interest and self when doing your job search. And so I just like to summarize these amazing points you shared very quickly, because they all really come together, I think, to create an excellent job search plan overall. So we have staying organized, telling people you're looking for work, tracking your progress, figuring out what you want to research and then doing that research, creating an action plan with achievable milestones, familiarizing yourself with your own career narrative and how you want to share it to your industry, practice, keep an eye out for any events you can network to meet people within your industry and outside of your industry, because you might be pleasantly surprised and you might open some doorways for yourself that you weren't sure of. And I think one of the key messages that I'm taking away here is to find ways to stay motivated, because the job search process can potentially be isolating. It can be difficult. It can feel defeating, it can make you feel defeated at times. And that's why we do these things that we do, why we run alumni panels, why we are very open about vulnerabilities as well as successes, why the Career Management Center exists to help you for whatever question you might have or any of your needs you might need addressed. And also that I think what Nick had shared is, and all of you have spoken to in different ways tonight, is to chip away at the process. Feel like you're getting something done, whether that is working on a resume one week, or talking to someone at a networking event another week, or figuring out how you want to express yourself, or practicing through interview stream and listening to yourself with interview questions and responses. You can do so many different things to just keep the ball rolling. So if you aren't hearing back right away from industry while you're applying, you don't feel that you're putting all your eggs into just one basket, which is just the application itself. And really great things come out of the woodwork when you also do these other activities and when you also build your confidence and your abilities over time. So nothing happens overnight. So I think it's really great that all of you really highlighted what I think is so true to this process, is to stay motivated, to stay in a positive headspace, to know you're not the only one out there, and to lean on each other, lean on your network, lean on the Career Management Center, lean on your peers. And that being said, I would like to ask, and probably should have done this ahead of time, but I assume you're all open to this because you're all on LinkedIn, to ask that you're open to connecting with the attendees today if they wish to reach out to you on LinkedIn to ask any further questions, or maybe just have a quick, not quick, but maybe, a chat at some point about your journey and what you went through. I'm sure there'll be some follow-up questions. So unfortunately, I didn't get to every single question. There were a few more in the chat box. So feel free, if I didn't address your question or the panelists didn't have a chance to respond to your question, you're welcome to reach out to them through LinkedIn. I just want to thank our panelists for being with us today. That was amazing. I had such a great experience. Our first alumni panel, I thought we couldn't top. And I'm not saying that one wasn't great either, but this was really, really great. And so I just want to thank each of you for being here. And for everyone who stayed tuned in until the end, thank you for being here as well. I hope there was some really great learning. And hopefully we'll be able to, at some point, connect in future. We know that Kyle will be on the campus because he's not graduated yet. So we will potentially see Kyle, but hopefully we'll be able to see the rest of you in person at some point as well. So thanks everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you again, and have fun connecting with each other.